It's hard to believe, but has Exela Technologies finally found a bit of a stable price point? Hi again, everyone. I hope you're all doing really well. So it's been a couple of weeks since you probably seen me do a video on Exela Technologies, and if you didn't hear or know, I actually got banned from YouTube for a week. Honestly, it was a pretty silly thing, and I thought it was quite unfair the way it all went down. But anyway, lesson kind of learned, but not really. I don't accept it. Anyway, who gives? So talking about Exela Technologies, it's been about 2 weeks since I last covered it, and really, to be honest, you haven't actually missed much from me because there hasn't been too much in terms of company updates since I last covered, other than, sort of an expansion of what's been happening in Canada with their scanner business and, a couple of little minor things. But, there hasn't actually been too much happening. There's been no SEC filings, no AK forms, and there's been no real headlines from the company. So it's kind of like a no news, good news sort of situation, I suppose. Obviously, the stock's regained compliance with the NASDAQ again, which is great news. And since then, the stock's actually traded in a kind of relatively stable band, kind of bouncing between the $4.80 mark and maybe $5.20 mark, more or less, over the last, I'll say, maybe fortnight. We've seen kind of some sharper movements in the stock, and that's quite understandable given how small the float is now. It's only about 6 million, just a touch over 6 million shares publicly being traded, plus factoring in that about 85% of it's held by institutions. So, it's only about 15% of that 6 million float that's moving around, and so it's fairly low volume, but sort of seeing kind of dramatic price swings. But despite that, we're seeing only a trading range around that 480 to 520 range at the moment, where it's sitting about $4.85 at the moment, I think. So kind of a bit of stability, which is like a unseen thing for a while. However, when you factor in like the reverse stock split that happened, currently if you take $5 as the average price right now per share, that means we're sitting on about 2.5 cents per share pre-split value. So it's not a great price point, to be honest, but at least we've seen a bit of stability in the stock. In terms of shorting, the shorts I think have kind of been a little bit spooked by what can actually happen with Exela Technologies at the moment, so they haven't really been touching it too much. There's only been about 1% or 1.2% of the float being shorted, but again, because 85% of it's held institutionally, and we extrapolate that 1.2% over the 15% that is being freely traded, we're only looking at about 7% of the float held short, which isn't actually very high. And compared to how high it has been in the past with Exela Technologies, it's kind of a bit of a different ballgame. Now, also, I guess what's kind of maybe helping deliver a bit of stability is that the earnings figures that did come out in their most recent earnings call, were actually somewhat positive, in the sense that they were sort of seeing a bit of a positive move in their stock, and they were quite optimistic as a business because they believe that when we have these kind of times of unsure economic situations, like, this inflation problem, it doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. A lot of businesses, as a means of trying to cut back costs, look to providers of business process automation services such as Exela Technologies. So they believe they stand to gain some business out of this current situation. Plus, they have their ongoing subscriber revenue, which seems to kind of being picked up a little bit. Now, anyone who's been following what I talk about with Exela Technologies, my big sort of, I'm calling it the Hail Mary play that I have running for the stock, is that I'm waiting for an asset sale, which is coming supposedly later this year. So back in about September, August, October last year, I can't remember the exact date, Exela Technologies started talking about the idea of selling XBP Europe, and the detail came that they were going to sell a minority stake in that business unit and retain control. And the way they were going to sell it is do a new listing for that entity, and it was actually valued at about $200 million. I suppose that will be free from the Exela debt change, which is why it kind of boosts the value of the stock, and it's been a pretty profitable business, taking away the debt situation for Exela Technologies. So from that, what they talked about, if they were to get $200 million as a valuation, they were to retain, say, like 60% control of the stock. That still means that they're going to bring in approximately $80 million before expenses and stuff. And that money was earmarked to obviously pay down some of the debt that they've accrued over the years, which will be doing wonders for the stock, as it will improve the underlying value of Exela stock. And further to that, they've also earmarked that there's the chance that they will at least take part in a small stock buyback. Now, given that the market cap sits at around $30 million out of that $80 million, if they were to commit even just like a $10 million sort of stock buyback, which really isn't actually a lot in terms of how big some stock buybacks are, especially relative to the over $1 billion revenue that the company does every year, given that the stock will have an improved underlying fundamental given the reduced debt, and how tightly held the stock is, that $10 million stock buyback, I believe, is actually going to send the stock skyrocketing. And that's what I'm hanging out for. Now, in terms of where I am with my position now, I bought in, earlier this year thinking that maybe there wouldn't be any. I kind of always sensed that there was going to be a reverse stock split to regain NASDAQ compliance, but I kind of was hoping that the XBP deal would go down prior to that. Obviously, it hasn't. And so, from when I bought in to now, on my position's down by about 65%, 60% or something like that. So, it's kind of, I put money in this expecting it could work out really well or it could go really pear-shaped. So at the moment, things look pear-shaped, but I'm still kind of optimistic because it is coming up to August. We're, almost midway through June now, more or less, maybe a quarter through June, whatever, don't get too specific here, either I'm trying to. Anyway, so we're only about a little bit over a month and a half away until we might start seeing some actual developments around this sale of XBP Europe. And this is something that was kind of not directly mentioned, but they still said that was on track to happen in terms of an asset for sale coming, later this year. And, it seems to be August is the date that things are going to start to come together for that. Of course, there's always the chance that this gets kicked down the road to a later date or even gets scrapped altogether. But I think it sounds like for what they want to do and how they want to use the money to restructure the company, it's kind of a logical thing to, help free up the business's balance sheet and, kind of in some sense, assure what's going to happen to the company in the future. So still hanging out for that. If I lose the rest of my money in this stock, not the rest of my money, the rest that I put in, I'm not going to put, geez, not betting the house on this one, but, I've kind of, that's the risk I've taken to gamble. But, I'm hoping that come August, we might actually have a bit of an idea of what's actually going on with this. Anyway, there you go. That's a little update, what's going on, just refresher on what I think is going on with Exela Technologies. I hope you're all have been really well. Please share your thoughts in the comments below as well. We've kind of got a bit of an Exela community here, so it's always good to hear from everyone. And I'll try and come back again with some more regular videos on Exela Technologies when I get a chance. Until next time, everyone, may the markets trade in your favor. Cheers.